Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Alicia. Today we're going to be doing a quick review of Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Moreno Garcia. So if you are interested in learning my thoughts, stick around. So without any further ado, let's get right into the video. Silvia Moreno Garcia is slowly becoming one of my favorite authors. I love the way that she writes characters, especially female heroines, but I also love the way that she builds an atmosphere and how you really feel submersed in every story of hers, even though she writes in like every single genre. I just find it so incredible how she's able to write in different genres and still give you a story that feels really authentic and very atmospheric and with really nuanced characters. I ended up picking up Velvet Was the Night this month for the Lights Out book club that is run by Riveting Reads, or Savannah, here on YouTube. We did just go ahead and do a live show on her channel, so if you are interested in participating in that book club or watching the live show for this particular book, I will have the details listed down in the description box, so make sure to check that out. So Velvet Was the Night is set in 1970s Mexico, and right off the bat I do want to make a distinction in that this is a noir book. It's not fantasy, it's not horror, it's not a thriller, and she does give a little description on Goodreads on what you can expect, but essentially a noir has lower stakes than a thriller, and you do have morally great characters. There's a lot of flashbacks, there's a lot of dark themes and or violence that is incorporated along with a lot of action. So if you're thinking about picking up this book, definitely go into this knowing that it is going to be slower paced. It's not going to be a fast-paced thriller. Another thing that I think would be really helpful before jumping into this book is knowing a little bit more about the time period. This is set during the 1970s when the dirty wars were going on in Central and Latin America, and essentially it's a time of suppression by the government. There is a lot of activism and student protests that are being led, and those are being suppressed by the government because of the very successful Cuban Revolution that was going on. Mexican leaders were afraid that communism would spread throughout Mexico, and so was the United States. And because of this, there were groups that popped up that were trained by the Mexican government and in part by the CIA to go ahead and harass protesters, to beat them up and make sure to instill fear so that they wouldn't protest anymore. If you do want to learn more about this, I suggest to go ahead and look up the Corpus Christi massacre. In Spanish, I believe it's called El Falconero or the Tlatleko massacre. These are both massacres that happened in the city of Mexico from student protesting that were led by the government and that were covered up. So now that you're thinking, why are you giving us a history lesson, Alicia? Why is this happening? So this is because Velvet Was the Night is told in a dual point of view. The first point of view, we follow a young man named Elvis. That's not his real name, but that is the name that he takes up because he loves Elvis and he loves the rock and roll era. He in general just loves music and listening to it. And he is part of the Hawks. He is part of this group of thugs whose job is to go in and steal cameras from the reporters, to instigate fear in protesters and make sure that there is no revolution that is coming to head. And this is where our story takes off. Our first chapter begins with Elvis as he and his buddies are going into a protest and making sure to target the journalists and the student protesters who are filming anything that is going on. In our dual point of view, we follow our main character, Maite, and Maite is a secretary at a law firm. She has a tumultuous relationship with her mother. A lot of the times her mother tends to prefer her sister because her sister is more outgoing, she's friendlier, and her sister just seems to have life figured out. On the other hand, Maite is very disillusioned with her life. She loves reading these romance graphics, and she loves the idea of one day falling in love, even though she's only ever fallen in love once, and that didn't turn out really well. So she's really disillusioned with her life and she just wants something more. In comes in her neighbor Leonora. Leonora is this rich art student who is involved in the student protest, and Leonora asks Maite to take care of her cat for the weekend since she'll be going away for a few days. Even though Maite doesn't love cats, she decides to accept the offer. She needs the money. Her car is currently impounded by a mechanic because she can't afford the repairs, and so she's like, yeah, sure, why not, I'll take care of your cat. So she's meant to take care of the cat for 3 days, but after 3 days Leonora is missing. She doesn't come back. Because Maite has Leonora's cat, she is sort of pulled in to finding out what happens to Leonora because she doesn't want the cat around. She just wants to find her owner, get paid, and make sure that she doesn't have to keep taking care of this cat. And this sort of pulls her into this larger political context that she didn't want to be immersed in the first place. So I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was pretty brilliant. I loved our very nuanced but also morally great characters. Maite is definitely someone that you don't like right off the bat. She is very self-interested and she's also very self-deprecating. Elvis, on the other hand, is someone who loves music and who was very intelligent, and he just never really got a shot at life. He wasn't doing well in school, and so he ended up on the streets and got picked up by a bunch of thugs who he started to see as family, and he was just veering down the wrong path. They both definitely make questionable choices, but I love that Silvia Moreno Garcia was able to weave in this added layer of nuance so that you're able to really understand where they're coming from. Another pretty genius thing that I think she did is that you have two people who are not politically involved. They don't care about what's going on in the larger political atmosphere. They don't read the newspaper. They definitely succumb to the government propaganda, and they don't really care about making a difference in their society. They very much care about their own path and their own journey, until they're like slowly sucked in and they start to realize that these issues do affect them. So I just thought that was brilliantly done, and I like that Silvia Moreno Garcia did it that way, because even now in current times we tend to think that politics don't really affect us, when at the end of the day they do. Another thing that I really loved about the book is this slow build of tension. Now, for people that traditionally read thrillers, this book is going to seem really slow for you, but there is a slow burning build of tension. My camera cut off at some point and I don't know where I left off, but where I think I left off is that there is this slow building of tension, and it culminates in this really impactful ending. Although the ending wasn't my favorite part personally, I do think that there are some moments of high stakes there that really garner an emotional response, but overall the book for me was definitely more about the journey, learning about these characters and how they're interrelated, learning about the politics and the time period. And as someone who is Mexican American, every single time that I read any book by Silvia Moreno Garcia, there's definitely something nostalgic about that. One thing I do want to mention is that this book does have a lot of Spanish in it, and some of it is a lot of Spanish slang. There are some words that you might have to look up if you are diving into this without knowing Spanish, but it's not so bad where you won't know what's going on. You'll just have to pull up your phone and look up, get a dictionary up and type in the word, which is totally fine. And if you're a music lover, there's a lot of music and references to the rock and roll era with Elvis, and Silvia Moreno Garcia actually made a Spotify playlist that you can listen to, and I kind of recommend listening to that before you go into this book, because I feel like now that I've listened to the playlist, if I were to read the book a second time, whenever those scenes come up where there is an emphasis on music or a song is brought up, I feel like I'll be able to feel the vibe even more. Those were my thoughts on Velvet Was the Night. Let me know down below if you participated in the Lights Out Book Club and if you like the book. If not, let me know if you plan on reading it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!